It's Wednesday night. Night. All right, well, good evening, everybody. We have a small group to start with. Hopefully we'll have more people joining us as we move forward. This evening we're wide open for questions, but we also have had a few questions that have come in. First dibs always are people who are in the room, because people in the room, if you bother to come to the room, you're allowed to ask what you want to ask. If, however, you're not in the room, you can also, or if you are, you can type things in down in the bottom in the chat area if you don't want to actually say things out loud. So sort of like this, how are you? And so it'll pop up and then everybody can see it if they look. If they don't look, they won't see anything. I'm not responsible for keeping up with the chat. That's up to Corey and Manda and maybe Rachel. Maybe Rachel will look at the chat. I'm not going to guarantee anything. If you want to talk, you have to unmute yourself, and then we may have you mute back, because sometimes there's a lot of feedback when several of us get on at once, and it's really annoying and not particularly helpful because you can't really hear what anybody's saying. And then finally, we do have a couple of little video clips I wanted to share out and get some feedback on, but also have you take a look at for you to have some think time on a couple little video clips that we have, because we have an upcoming webinar or two that relate somewhat to this, and wanted to give you a shot looking at them ahead of time. So Corey, do you want to start it off with any questions people might have? You have a question for me just to get started, or anybody in the room have a question, a burning question? Ooh, all right. So Ms. Graves have a question, a serious question. Now tell me how you say your first name, which is very interesting.
Unmute.
Unmute.
Okay. Yes. My first name is pronounced chairs, like what you sit in, plural. Yes, chairs.
Okay, yes. Cool.
So this is my question. I'm a long-term care ombudsman.
Okay.
And then just to give you a little background from where I'm coming from with my question, I also have a 15-year-old son who's autistic. So my background is lots of knowing is sensory processing, executive function, desensitizing, that type of thing.
Environmental mod, yeah.
The whole 9 yards. So my question is, I know I watched one of your Ask Teepa video tutorials, and it said so much of the autistic brain is similar to the brain changes that happen with dementia. So my question becomes, can you use some of the same strategies? Like, can you use the visuals? And if so, at what point would the visuals not work? Can you use first then statements? First, we're going to do this, then we're going to do this. Also, sensory diets. Will those,
yep.
And yes. Also desensitizing program.
Okay, cool.
So those are my things. Those are things I know that have worked with my son who's autistic.
Yep.
Those also with somebody who has the brain changes with dementia.
Okay, great. So you have some really great questions, Cheers. And I'm going to actually divide that out into those 5 things you raised, and we'll talk about each one a little bit. So the first one, the brain failure areas tend to be the same areas that don't develop as well or are challenging for people living with autism. And particularly people not, certainly the early stages of dementia can look a lot like mild symptoms of people who are on the spectrum, but just barely, or people who have, some indicators, but not full out diagnoses. The thing is that Whereas with autism, things tend to stabilize, except when you go through adolescence and you have all the hormonal shifts.
Mm-hmm.
But with autism, that stabilizes. The difference being that people living with dementia they're in a constantly changing state, sometimes from moment to moment, but certainly over time.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things that happens to be fairly significantly different for them versus just people with autism is the awareness of passage of time. Okay. And the ability to hang on to a sequence. People with autism can frequently learn with some practice sequencing. Mm-hmm. Folks who have particularly executive area prefrontal damage, they have the steps, but they don't stay in sequence. So they skip different steps at different times, and it's really frustrating to be around someone like this, because you can't do one, then two, then three, because they won't remember what just happened right before because of the memory impairment of immediate recall. So, however, the plus of that element is you can show, so pick up the cup, good. Now put it under the holder, yep, good. Now move the cup to the left, yes. So you can give step by step, but they don't learn step by step. But it's really helpful to provide information step by step.
Okay, so breaking it down. Well, okay.
Yeah, but you can't first do this, then do this.
It's not going to work. Okay, makes sense. That makes sense.
So one of the other thoughts that you had in questions that you had, visual cues, they can be very effective.
Okay.
Particularly if you give them momentarily before you give the audio portion. So would you like a cup of coffee?
Oh, okay. That makes sense. Mm-hmm.
So I give the visual to center the brain and the eye on the object. Okay. Then I give the verbal information about the object.
Okay.
Now, if someone is progressing further, I would go.
Oh, okay. That makes sense.
Which then puts the whole sentence in that, rather than, do you want a cup of coffee?
Could you do that, like, let's say with the shower? Can you show them the picture of the shower?
Actually,
the action, showing that is going to be better than showing the picture. Okay.
Yeah, because taking a picture and then putting it into real space and time, it gets a little tricky. So
that makes sense.
Yeah, so a gesture of come with me, because they have really come with me. They, that's an old habit. Okay. Showing this place and offering choices. Now, either or choices are very effective with people living with dementia. So would you rather this or this?
Okay.
The trick is you want to make sure you put it within center field of vision, because we have that center visual field phenomena.
Okay, yeah.
And then we want to make sure it's slightly outside of arm's reach. Because if it's within arm's reach, then it may get reached for.
Got it.
It wants to not be theirs yet. And then your last, one of the last pieces that we talked about, you talked about, was sensory diet. And the answer is absolutely. As long as we're aware, people change. But what that does do is give us a menu to look at. And what we would have to do then is be very thoughtful about crossing things off the menu as somebody's abilities and interests are changing.
Unmute me. Hold on. You froze. Is that me or you?
I think it's her. Let's hang on.
This is where I find often in okay, sorry. Am I back?
Mm-mm.
Am I here? Let me go away and come back. Am I back?
You're back.
I don't know what happened. I'm sorry. So one of the tricky things with sensory diet would be that as people are shifting, we want to make sure we take something off the list. But when we take something off, the question becomes, what do we put on? Because what happens then is people drop the menu and pretty soon there's nothing left. And it's like, well, that's not true. So it's a little different in that people with autism, you have that full menu, and then that tends to be the same and stay the same a good bit. But with dementia, then what you see is, no, I need to, if this one comes off, what are we going to put in there instead? Because what will happen is it gets less and less and less, and people say, well, they don't do anything. And it's like, well, what are you offering?
Right.
Because as abilities shift, we need to shift what the person's menu looks like, not that they need some heavy input. So for instance, pretzels. Chewing up pretzels. Well, at some relatively in the middle to later stages of dementia, chewing pretzels isn't safe for me, but I still need something that allows me to grind and chew, or else I'll start doing my own teeth. And that's not safe because I can break off roots and crack my molars. So looking at alternatives, what could I do? And this is where going to the autism catalog of finding some of the chewing toys.
Yeah, the
chewing necklaces, things like that are heavy duty. They're meant to withstand adult teeth. And they have plenty of force and effort. It also keeps things like me from getting into crunching ice, which is another one. The challenge is, how do we interpret when they're crunching ice? Some people use it as a counter irritant rather than a stress reliever. Because they're actually hurting because their roots are exposed, and putting cold in there is making it worse.
Okay.
Yeah. And and Stephanie's indicating sense of taste and smell is disappearing with Lewy body. And so that's an added phenomena, and textures become incredibly important. And lack of liking textures makes it really difficult, as well as fear that people are trying to do things they shouldn't. And some of the worst mistakes in long-term care is crushing up meds and putting them in food items that people find, and they have bitterness in it, and now they don't like food items. So
is there
great question though.
Okay, then one just follow up to that. I know that you've also spoken about where if someone's, let's say, using a Hoyer lift or moving somebody there in one of the chairs that go back, they can't feel where their body is, nor can, and you were talking about how they even lift their that's my son coming back, so I may have to mute myself here in a minute.
Sure.
Can you use anything sensory-wise to help them gain that, any of those senses back? I'm going to mute. My son's getting ready to come in the door.
Yeah.
You don't want to hear that.
Yeah, no, I got you. So one of the things that can happen is we can help people know about moving by using our bodies and showing them the movement while we're doing the movement, prior to having them do the movement. And then say, we're going to lean, 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 lean. And as I'm doing that and saying it, and I'm giving them support in lean, then I do, yes, yes, you're leaning, good, good, good. And you want to do that deep support voice. Yeah, yeah. Not a, oh, you did it, good job. Not that loud, trilly thing, but that deep sort of, yeah, that's it, you got it. So they get reinforced, but in a deep sort of support mode. And that's really important. And that's not unlike what we want to do with autism. That's, again, using a deeper, supportive, repetitive, yeah, 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 yeah. And that's what they will often start with, yeah, 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 yeah. That echolalia kind of pattern may be a seeking of a connection. So that might be something people are looking for. And again, helping people appreciate there's nothing wrong with that. Why is it that you have to have a linear conversation? What's wrong with that? Whoa, whoa, whoa. If it's bringing both of us to a place where we're having a connection, I mean, that's the point of communicating sometimes. And people want it to go somewhere. And it's like, it's just doing loops. We're just doing little loops, but little loops are better than no motion. Cool. Okay, Corey, I'll throw it back over your way. Or maybe I'll check in with Dallas and see if Dallas is interested in having a conversation with me for a few seconds. Dallas, you up for talking?
So,
Tell me a little bit about your recent hospital experience.
Wow.
So first of all, tell me this, this, or this.
No, depends on which frame you're talking, a spiritual frame, a physical frame, the outcome frame, different ways to measure.
Okay, so let me start first with your sense of being listened to well, first time through, here or here or here.
Mostly here that I remember, because
what were you asking for? Do you remember? Because you actually shared with me what you were asking people to be sensitive to.
Sound and light. And I got into a big dither with a young lady that was out there. I said, all I need you to do is stop the party out there a little. And if you could close the door, I would be so... We can't close the door. We can't close the door because you have dementia and you may leave. We need to know where... So, whoa. Oh, no, yeah. So, yeah, silly stuff. And...
So your experience was people had a vision of what dementia was, and they were putting it on you and saying, we can't trust you in your room with the door closed.
True.
And what you had asked for is reducing the amount of sensation you were getting, much as what Cheers was talking about. Like, you recognize, I can't handle that much sensation. It really wears me out and it makes me less able. And you were asking to drop the sensory a bit and give you some space so that it wasn't so overwhelming. And that was really hard for care providers to listen to. And they kept wanting to put a label on you as needing certain observation. And what you were saying is, yeah, but what I need is some quieter space so I don't have those symptoms you're going to be worried about.
Yes. I wish on reflection, I could have been more in a teaching mode.
Gee, at the hospital, I can't imagine why you didn't want to just teach them, Dallas, versus have care. I mean, heaven knows if you're in a hospital, that's when you should use your best teaching mode.
Okay.
So spiritually, what happened for you that felt like you came to a different place? Was that a plus or a minus?
Ooh, super plus.
Super plus.
Super plus. Yeah.
Huh. So for those of you who aren't familiar, Dallas is somebody who works with us some and is living with dementia, and he is quite able to speak for himself. But sometimes people don't listen. When people living with dementia can tell them things, they don't want to hear the questions and comments that are made. And so I just wanted Dallas to sort of get a chance to say, so what was, when you think about spiritual plus, can you give us any more detail on that, or is it hard to put it into words?
No, it's not hard. It's, my embarrassment of being spiritual sometimes gets in the way. But no, I believe that God was teaching me how to be thankful in the midst of bad stuff going on. And a couple other lessons that were intertwined, I should say. That's combined with that word, maybe.
They're good. You did a good combo word. I think it's yeah. Everything. Yeah. Well, interwoven and entwined. When you combine them, intertwined. I think that's finally, a good one. I like that one.
Finally, God brought some reconciliation between my wife and myself, who we've been apart for 2 years or so. So
cool.
Great stuff.
Good. Well, I'm glad you were able to find the wheat among the chaff, or the good sunshine among that big rainstorm you were through. So, but we're also glad to have you back.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right, Corey, I'll turn it over to you. See what you have happening out that way.
Okay, so we've got a nice crowd building over on YouTube, and a couple people have submitted questions. Let's see. First one is that my uncle has dementia, but he's still very high functioning. He's not, however, interested in maintaining hygiene.
Mm.
They've watched and read some things that you've shared about showering. This particular person doesn't necessarily need help, but needs some convincing to do it.
Right.
Any suggestions?
So who has the best relationship? So I'll try it with Catherine, because Catherine's on and she's one of our mentors, and I'll give her a chance. So Catherine, I want you to be this person who you're still fairly intact, but you're not seeing the value in doing hygiene anymore. You're just not feeling it. And I'll be your niece, so that there's similar wording.
Okay.
Okay. So Aunt Catherine, tell me a little bit about when I say, hey, Aunt Catherine, you haven't had a shower in a while. How about taking a shower? What goes in your mind? Tell me a little bit about how that makes you feel.
Well, first off, you're youngin', and I don't need you telling me what I need to do to take care of myself.
Okay, so part of it, you're already not liking that I'm younger and I'm talking to you about it.
Yeah,
Okay, so the age difference matters to you.
it sure enough does.
Okay,
But
okay, that's important.
I've been doing this. I've been taking care of myself my whole life. And
You
I
have.
don't need somebody coming in and telling me how to live my life and
Yeah.
how to take care of myself.
Yeah, so Catherine, I'm curious, Aunt Catherine, I'm curious, do you think you're still taking showers or washing up and changing your clothes as frequently as you used to, or have you noticed you're doing it less?
Well, sometimes I maybe I'm doing a little less because I used to, but listen,
Yeah.
I used to be really active and I would sweat a lot.
Okay.
And so I would always after that, but now I'm not doing so much anymore. So
Okay.
I don't need so much of a shower.
Okay, so one of the reasons, so you're thinking maybe you're doing it somewhat less, but you're thinking the reason why you don't need it as much is because you're not sweating as much, and you're just not sweating, so you don't need a shower as often.
And I'm just, as I getting older, I know I'm getting older.
Uh-huh.
I'm telling you something. I'm freezing cold all the time. So
Okay, so yeah. So the other thing you don't like is you don't like getting cold.
I do not.
Okay. So here's what I'm noticing. I'm noticing that frequently, it seems like it's actually more than just a day or two. I mean, and I don't know whether you're noticing or not, but it can be like a whole week before you do another wash up.
Oh, well, I
mean, did you notice that, or does it seem like it's not that long?
I don't think it's too long. It's generally a few days, but my days are so boring now. I don't know.
Well, okay. So I'll pause. So Rachel, what did you notice some of the things I was doing to try to help? Because this is a woman who still has some capacity, but she doesn't have huge insight into the changes in her. She's not noticing some shifts. So my first thing is to do what? What am I trying to figure out here?
You're trying to see her point of view and see if you can get any input and insight into how she's seeing and really kind of working together. So you're creating a relationship.
Well, but I've already brought it up. So, I mean, we were fussing for a while. So what am I trying to figure out? Is it that she's not liking me and my message, or is there something about bathing or showering that's not working? Or is it really about her being unaware that she's not keeping up with herself? So I'm really trying to do some problem solving, because I don't know, is it because I personally am bringing it up and she's not going to listen because I'm not the right person for her? Is it that, and so some of this, you're right, is figuring out, okay, so where can we come together? Can we find common ground? Does she have some environmental things that are making it harder for her to be interested in? Does she have some time awareness things that are making it harder for her? Or is she totally just not noticing things about herself? So I guess one of the questions for the person who asked the question, I'm assuming this person historically did pretty decent personal care. And so this is a shift and a change. And what is the person doing with their time and their days that makes a difference? Are there places and spaces they're going that looking good makes a difference? Could they be possibly doing wash-ups, but then putting the same dirty clothes back on because they're lying on the hamper, or they really aren't even washing up, they stink? I mean, do they smell bad, or is it something else?
Hey, Teepa.
Yeah.
Would it help to have a schedule?
It could, but only if the issue is the person is not keeping up with time, and a schedule helps. But how you implement the schedule gets to be tricky, because the challenge is if it's on a calendar, then I have to look at the calendar. If I mark it off when I do it, well, do I mark it off before I do it, after I do it? Do I remember that I did it long enough to mark it off? Could it be something like, could it be tied instead to, oh, hey, Manda, today's the day we're going to go do the stuff at the day center. And, tell you what, I'm wondering whether or not we should both get a little more ready. What color are you going to wear? Because I'll put on something that matches you.
Well, I'm wearing this one. I've got gray on.
You've got gray on. Oh, that I know you like that one and it's really comfortable. It is not your best look. I mean, and I know, I'm just saying, it really isn't. I mean, you have the blue one that looks a lot better on you. I'm just saying.
But
So,
I like, this one's nice.
I know you do. It feels comfortable, but I'm going to ask you for a favor. Could we at least try and switch to the blue one? And if you really hate the feel of it, okay, fine. But I mean, it is so much nicer on, I've got to tell you, it really does look better.
Okay. I'd be willing. I don't want to look like a slump going in there.
Well, I know you don't. You know what? Try a comb too. No, that's pushing the envelope. But the idea of using humor and being authentic with people, it depends on my relationship, but that's not your best color. I'm just going to be honest with you. Might be a way to get somebody to switch out. Now, when they get their clothes off, you know what? You've got something on your arm. Tell you what, do your pits just real quick, because I'm telling you, you can sometimes, it depends on the person. Not everybody's into honesty. If you've never done it before with somebody, then likely that's not going to be the first way to go. But the idea is scheduling it with something the person still values. If Manda doesn't like to go to the day center and she's only going because I've asked her to go, this isn't the time to do the dressing thing, because it's hard enough for her to go to the day center. So it's got to be something that has a plus for her. Or she's doing me a favor, or you have got something on this one. I don't know what it is. It's on the back. And what I'll sometimes do, I'll be honest, for people who are, they don't have awareness. They are unaware that those clothes are yucky, that they do have an odor. What I'll do is say, you have got something on the back of this. Here, tell you what, let me get this washed before it sets in. And what it is I'll put hand sanitizer in my hand. And when I mess with the back, I've got hand sanitizer on the back. And I said, I don't know what this is, but it went through the cloth. Here, at least let me wipe your back off to make sure it's nothing that's going to be on your skin. Here, you do the front, I did the back. Go ahead. And just, it's not everything, it's a little bit, but sometimes getting people more comfortable. Getting a little more comfortable with being with someone during personal care, particularly for people who've always been independent, like aunts and nieces or uncles, as a starter.
So Teepa, we did get a little more information on this, yes, this particular person does smell bad. Their day is not filled. They don't have a lot of activity to fill the day. He used to care for his wife, who was paralyzed, but she has passed. So things
Okay.
have really changed.
Okay, so more than likely, what I'm going to say is we talk about the 3 Ds. And so what we have is not delirium, because that's an acute episode. We do have a dementia, we know that, but I'm going to bet we also have a depression. And the I don't care, I don't really care, I can't care, I simply am incapable of caring has to do with lack of serotonin, lack of dopamine, and lack of also having that, the emotional hormone, which is the oxytocin. So working on relationship for a bit before you worry about smell, if you can find a way to build a relationship. Uncle James, I have a huge favor to ask of you. Will you come in the yard with me? I need to know something about this plant. Find that place where you have common ground and start to build emotional relationship again. But also it's physical action. He has to start doing stuff more so that taking a shower isn't the big event that it currently would be, or even washing up. He's hardly doing much of anything. What's weight doing? I worry about weight gain or loss, because that's also part of this puzzle. And so getting him to be more engaged with you, I will tell people use Vicks Vapor Rub for right now, so that you don't keep emotionally reacting to their odor until you start saying, Uncle Frank, I need help. Come on, for 5 minutes, and then you can come back in and sit down. Come on, come with me. I just need you to help me for 5 minutes. Oh, here, help me get these cans up. I've got lots of stuff to do. Here, put these up for me. And giving him some very basic things to do. But honestly, he's lost his job, he's lost his wife, he's lost relationships. And truly for him, he may actually be depressed, but medications with dementia and depression rarely result in a good outcome if you don't add talking. You know, you may actually talk about the aunt that isn't there anymore. I know you really miss her. You know, I was looking at you guys in a picture when you were younger. Whoa, do you still have that flannel shirt? I thought I saw it in the closet. One of the reasons he may not be caring about how he looks is who is there to care? And how much was he actually taking care of himself toward the end when he was taking care of his wife? Because it may have actually taken a back seat for quite some time, and he was doing quick wash-ups between the primary job of caring. And now he doesn't have a caring job, so why bother with the wash-ups? So it may be a deeper issue versus truly getting a shower. So I think it's a complex one that might take some more work before we ever get to a shower. Because otherwise it just feels like we don't like him. And it's not what we mean. We do, we love him. That's why you're trying to help. But he doesn't have that emotional commitment to the relationship, because he lost his wife and he lost his job.
I noticed in the comments here too that Stephanie was making a suggestion back to the showering.
Yep.
When her husband, she starts the shower when he's on the toilet.
Yep.
More of a prompt than a nag that way.
Exactly. Yeah. So often preparing that next step, sort of what Cheers asked early on, you know, like don't talk about after this and then we'll do this, but basically have it lined up. So the next thing, so often I'll say, oh, come here and check and see whether this water's hot enough. See if you like the temperature. Okay, now go ahead and take your shirt off. I'll take that while you get in. And so there's this sequencing dance that we do that's less focused on you're incompetent, let me help you, and more on check this temperature, see if it's about what you like. Yeah, tell you what, hand me your shirt, you can go on and get in. It just makes sense to do it rather than there's an argument about, well, I don't need a shower. Oh, okay, well, I thought you were gonna take one. Huh, all right. Well, do you wanna do just the wash up then? Because then you'll wanna check the sink and get it the right temperature.
I wanted to add in because I did the role play, I added in the element of the cold sensitivity because I worked with someone that when I figured out that was really the issue, I would turn the shower on before even got in the toilet. So the whole room, and I think you, Teepa, taught me, unless I'm sweating, it's too cold in there.
Yep. And
So
the
not
door
even
has
try
to be
get in the
shut.
bathroom until it's hot in there.
Yeah, and no air movement. So you can't turn the fan on until you're done,
Steam.
because air movement equals cold skin. That's
Warm
just the way it
towels
rolls.
as well. Warm towels.
Yep, towels make a big
Towels
difference.
from the dryer.
Yeah.
They
So-
actually make little heater units that I got on Amazon that you can also, while they're in the shower,
Make the room so warm.
they're not expensive. You just put the towels in there and they come out so they're
Yes, that's true. Yeah. So I think what we have two different scenarios, and I want to be clear so that folks don't think we're trying to fix it. We're not. What I'm saying with this uncle, I suspect you have depression and dementia, and that's got to be dealt with. And the showering and the bathing and the self-care is just a symptom of the untreated and not well-managed depression on top of his dementia. And you're just seeing that as a symptom. Whereas in these other situations, it is very common for people moving into the middle of this disease, mid-disease, to not see the purpose and value of getting wet. I mean, it's just an uncomfortable getting wet, getting into getting wet, being naked, being in front of another person that doesn't have any business looking at you. None of those things have particular appeal. So unless I have a firm commitment and I really care about being connected to you, I don't give a crap. I'm not doing it. So that idea of that's not depression, that's truly due to symptoms of dementia. Whereas this gentleman, I suspect we've got some different things going on there. Yeah.
And you touched a little bit on depression, and somebody else had commented and said, what about CBD oil for depression?
Yeah, we're doing an article. We have a couple of articles coming up in the next journal on CBD and THC and marijuana in general. And the idea of this is a new medication. And with all new medications, there's pluses, there's minuses, and there's And the reality is, in the US at least, CBD oil is just now really hitting the market. And we do not have solid studies looking at its impact. And right now it's a hot ticket. And anything you use can be abused, and anything you don't use can be missed. So is it possibly worth, giving it a shot? Yeah, but do you want to have an idea of what baseline looks like before you start doing something, so you know whether or not you're getting side effects or effects or nasty effects? And also really being clear that it could, but it could also not be helpful at all. And we don't know enough. There are some preliminary studies on other symptoms, but depression, that one right now, from everything that I'm looking at and reading, CBD is somewhere right in the middle here. I think for some people it might be a helpful thing. I think for other people it may just, it turns into something that takes me away from the world. So it allows me to just disconnect, which I'm already disconnected. That's a little different than being helpful in living life. So it may take pain away, but it may not engage you in living. It's a risk at this point with what we know.
If I can just add something to that, if you are in any type of online support forums for care partners or people living with, ask other people who are using it. Ask them for the good stories and ask them for the bad stories. The Online Dementia Journal is going to come out next week, and we do have some articles with some resources in there for those of you who are looking for more information. So if you're not connected to that, please go to teepasnow.com and subscribe.
It's free.
It's free.
It's just something we put out there. You don't have to do anything else but look at it.
So we have another question. Someone is asking, is Rivotril sleeping pill safe for an 82-year-old woman with dementia? She's currently on memantine. I know I'm not saying
Memantine. It's that memantine is Namenda's generic form, which is a glutamate moderator, which taken alone, not a lot of evidence for a lot of stuff, but people still try it because the options are limited. The reality is, it depends on the dementia. So let me say that first. Depending on the dementia, as a rule, sleeping pills that are used, medications, benzodiazepines, things that are used to help people sleep, are not particularly safe for most older adults because it increases the risk of a hangover and an intellectual and functional hangover, but it also increases the risk that your balance and coordination will not be great. And because it makes you go into a less aroused and alert state, you do not come out of sleep quick enough to get to a place of awakeness to get up and go to the bathroom. So your risk of falls around getting up to going to the bathroom have increased fairly dramatically. And the length of time you have to get to the bathroom once you wake up is shorter because you took too long waking up. So you're more likely to have incontinence episodes, which if I get distressed about being incontinent, now my anxiety kicks up. And so I don't go back to sleep, but I have a sleep med on board. And so the next day, I've got the groggy hangover business. So as a rule, sleep meds are not recommended for older adults with dementia, even higher risk for weight loss, because what happens is with the hangover, most people find their best oral intake, their best intake of nutrition is often breakfast. Early morning, not early in the morning, but first meal of the day tends to be a fairly well-consumed meal for most people. And if that was the case, then my grogginess makes me not consume as well. It also increases the risk of dehydration and ultimately then the risk of urinary tract infections. So it's sort of this cascade of events that comes from using sleep meds. So on the other hand, if you're the only caregiver and you're really struggling with managing care, the question becomes, do local resources have the availability to have a caregiver at night? So the person could be somewhat up and down at night, but you get rest. Because this is not a one-person disease. So we got to be tuned in to the reality of, you know, if the question is, how do you do this when you're running solo? What I'd say is, if you can't find another partner, it puts everybody at higher risk for something not going well.
Thank you, Teepa.
The one other thing I'd say is, if the person is not being exposed to sunlight for at least a half hour to 45 minutes before noon, we're missing an opportunity to reset a clock. Being out and exposed to sunlight, natural sunlight or UV radiation prior to noon helps reset a circadian clock for sleeping at night. So being outdoors, truly outdoors in the late morning, can be very effective for many people at helping them set their clock. And then also looking at activity in the afternoon, doing something, going somewhere, observing something different. Visual regard and activity regard of different things tends to set us up to start to close the shop down and be ready to go into more of a hibernate mode. If you've been hibernating all day, why the devil would you need to go to sleep at night? So the idea is you got to go somewhere and do something in order to be ready for the sleep cycle. And one of our challenges, people sit and veg out because that's, and maybe throw a ball back and forth a little bit or something, but we don't have really sterling programs often to engage people in the afternoon or early evening, so that then by evening, everybody's, you know, all depends. Anyway, there we go. Stop, Teepa.
All right. So we've got a question from Darlene. She's wanting to know about dealing with sadness. And there's two scenarios going on. One of them is the question of, why is this happening to me? I used to be smart and good and all of those things. And then also they're looking at losing a pet, a very dear pet. And there were two, I think, if I understand that correctly. One has passed and that seemed to go okay, but they're anticipating this one might be a little harder.
Yeah.
So if you could just talk a little bit about dealing with the sadness.
So unfortunately, or fortunately for this person, she has a level of awareness of loss. I am not me. I am not able to be me. And the me I was, I liked. The me I am is less. So unlike some people who don't recognize themselves as being less than they were, this woman seems to, or male, whichever one, this person seems to recognize in themselves, I feel less than I was, and I really miss me. And I don't understand what I've done to cause me to be less. So a sense of, it's a combination of wanting to know what I did that caused this and trying to assign blame or responsibility. Because if I could just wrap my head around that, then could I let it go? So if that's part of it, then what I might try is, Catherine, can you ask, or who would like to, does somebody else want to try it? Catherine, do you want to try being the person that doesn't understand and wants to know what you've done, what's going on? Why is this happening to me?
Sure.
Go for it.
I do not understand why this had happened to me. I have a master's degree.
Yeah, you've always been really, really smart, and you've got a degree and you were successful, and this is not fair.
No, and
none of it is fair.
Industry. I helped people who had problems with their thinking, this is not fair.
So you have been that person. You worked with people who weren't able to think, and now it's happening to you.
I was a nurse who did everything to help people.
Yeah. So hey, Catherine.
I understand this whole.
Yeah, this whole thing going on. So Catherine, let me ask you, when you were helping people, did any of those people ever say, I don't understand what's happening to me?
Well, sure they did.
Well, what did you tell them when they said that?
I think I would tell them that I was really sorry that was happening to them, and that nobody has an answer.
Nobody has an answer. Yeah, and that's hard because you're an answer person. You've always liked to have answers.
And that was my answer.
And that was your answer, that there isn't an answer.
I know, and that's so confusing now.
It's confusing, yeah, because before you figured it out, and so you had an answer for that, and now you can't find the answer.
I had answers for me. I could always figure out when something was not working. I could sit down and make a list, and this was pro or con, and I could make the decision.
Yeah. Hey, so Catherine?
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if we could still try some of that, because I'm not convinced that you can't do that. So tell me, do you remember ever doing anything to deliberately make yourself not be able to think?
No, I always did everything.
I don't remember that either. I never remember you being really risky or doing things that don't. So what am I in fact having her do? What do you notice about what I've done with her? Mary Donnelly, are you there or are you not there? A lot of folks are listening, but not actively. Oh, go ahead, Stephanie.
I think you're trying to shift her away from blaming herself to not having a cause that is related to something she personally did to herself to cause this to happen.
Yeah. So what we're doing is what I'm doing is validating she still is her. And she's still capable of this, because what she sees is she sees an empty bucket, and there's no empty bucket. I mean, she's still quite capable. She's just getting stuck in this cycle. And so I'm helping her do this last thing that she used to do with everybody. and she just needs a little bump to be able to do it. Is it going to come up again? Absolutely. Because every now and then, not every now and then, repeatedly, it just keeps hitting her that she can't be exactly how she was. And it's like, you know what, you're right about that, but it doesn't mean you're less, it means you're different. And you don't like that part, and I got that, but let's see what you still can do. Because I think she's given up on her. And there's no point in giving up on her. She's still able to do a lot of things, but she's convincing herself to not try for fear of failing. And so what I've got to do is figure out how to support right up underneath her so she can't fail. It's not an option fail. She can be successful at doing this, but I'm going to have to share the load a little bit without it feeling like I'm robbing her of that. And that's the thing about, I would say, working with people who have depression and dementia, is that very few people are trained in how to do the combo work of what they're really missing is how much they could do it on their own. And now they actually will need a partner to help a little bit, whether that partner is a person or whether it's an animal or whether it's a belief in God, whatever it is, it's going to take some time to work through that. And it's going to come back and bite you again and again, because this inability thing keeps popping up. And some days you can. And so you trick yourself into thinking, see, I still can. And then you just go to do what you did and suddenly it's missing again. And that hit and miss, that engine that hits and misses, that's a tough one. Because it keeps making you think maybe. Yeah, Stephanie?
My husband is a little different, and he gets into those missed patterns. He gets into, I only have depression. I don't have dementia. There's no dementia. I don't have it. And so, like, even giving up paying the bills has been a really hard thing because that's what he's always done. But we have like a water bill that hasn't been paid in a year because he can't go because he doesn't have dementia. He only has depression.
Okay, yeah. So, hey, Stephanie, I'm going to ask you for a favor. I know you always do the bills, and I know you have depression and you can do it. I want you to show me if you were ever not able to do it, how I would do it, because I don't do it. You're the one that does it, and I have no clue how you do the bills. And if something were to happen to you, I'm going to be in deep crap. So I'm asking you for a favor to work with me so I learn how to do the bills.
But if you do that, then what happens if we both pay the same bill and they get double paid because you can't do it and I can do it at the same time?
I know, and so you're really good at it. So you should be doing it, and you're just going to show me how to do it. Can we work on you showing me?
Well, no, because then you're going to take it away from me, and then I can't do it anymore.
Okay, so you can't do it because what you're worried about is I'll try to take it. Yeah, see, I don't really want it. Yeah, I'm not wanting it. The only reason I'm wanting to know how is if you couldn't at some point, because you get so depressed that you can't make yourself do it.
Well, you've already taken away the car. I can't drive anymore.
Yeah, so the car you can't drive. There's a lot of things that you're missing. Yeah. And so it feels like the bills are one that if I start messing in it, then you'll lose that. Okay. Is there somebody else that you could try working with that's not me?
Well, no, because I know all the rules.
I know you do.
And
I know you
I've
do.
always looked after the money. And
Okay. So we're going to argue about it if we go further, aren't we?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I would say
my heels are going to be stuck.
Yeah, because so what I'd say is in those situations, if it comes to a dead end, then whoever the person is who's trying to help has to totally stop playing that game. Because if you try to intervene, it won't work. And it needs to have a little space and then have a totally different person trying to work on something. Typically, what I'll try is I'll say, I have some bills and I hear you're the one in the family that does the bills. Will you show me, I'm going to show you my checkbook and I'm going to show you my bills. Can you show me what I do here? Because I'm not familiar with it. Do you have yours so you could show me while you're doing yours? Like I have to pay my water bill. So
Yeah.
show me what you do with the water bill, but it can't be you, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay, so let's go back to the other side of this coin. No, you're good. No, it's fine. Let's go to the other side of the coin. The other side of the coin that we had, the other situation that we had was we have a dog that's dying. And we've had one that died, but now we have the loss of an animal. It could be the loss of a person. It could be a spouse, because I've certainly run across where the primary caregiver and care partner has developed cancer and they're going to die. And we all know they're on their very last bit to go. And the person living with dementia is going to be coping with that loss and trying to anticipate some of what could happen there and how to be ready in support mode when that does happen. And sometimes you absolutely need all the supports that you put in place to be in place. And other times it will surprise you that the person says, oh, yeah, well, you know, he was sick a really long time. I mean, it's remarkable. You don't know what somebody's going to do until you're in the moment, but we want to plan for what we would call a catastrophic potential. But then we got to be okay when it's just a storm. And then we want to really be okay when it turns out it was nothing but a cloud on the horizon, and not really get all, but I mean, they didn't even miss the dog. And it's like, I know it's always surprising when sometimes people gloss over what we thought they would really miss, and they don't seem to miss it like we thought they would. But let's go ahead and talk about through a little bit of what we would want to plan for. So if an animal is dying, or we are talking about maybe for animals particularly, we do sometimes euthanize them because seeing them struggle and suffer and they're in a lot of distress. Many people believe that isn't fair. Other people, it's the life of the animal, and when the animal finally dies, then they die. Everybody has their own, and I'm not advocating one or the other. I'm just going to say, let's say in this case that we're considering euthanizing the animal because they're in a lot of distress and it doesn't seem fair. That's our set going in. But the person has already lost an animal. So one of the things, how far into the disease is the person? Do they still have language? And do they seem at all aware of the illness of the animal? So if they have some language and if they seem aware that the animal is ill. So Rachel, can you be the person who has some language and is aware that the animal is ill? And I'll scope that out a little bit. So Rachel, I noticed that you have Chloe on your lap again. Yeah.
Yeah, Chloe, I don't know what I'd do without Chloe. Chloe
Yeah.
has been right here. She's protected me, and she knows. I mean, my husband didn't want her to when she came, but you know what? When she came, he wanted her and he claimed her. But it's my dog.
I know, but
he would never want a dog.
He would never want a dog, but that dog really became, and so for you, it's not just about Chloe. It's also about your husband and Chloe.
Yeah, because he didn't want the dog. He wasn't having anything to do with the dog. And then my son got it for my birthday.
And it was yours. Yeah, she's yours. She is your baby girl. That's for sure.
And you should see, and she's so smart. It's the best dog.
She is smart. So how's she been doing lately? I see she sits on your lap a lot. Tell me about how she's been doing.
Well, she's slowing down a little bit, but she can still get up on my lap, and she takes naps with me because we both nap a lot. All the
you
day,
both nap a lot.
So we just nap together.
Yeah. So with most dogs, they don't live as long as people. Now, have you had dogs before, or is this the first one?
Oh, I've had other dogs. We've had 3 dogs.
You've had 3 different dogs. So what happens when dogs get older and they get sick? What do you guys tend to do? Do you have them live until they die, or do you sometimes have them put to sleep so they don't struggle, or what do you do?
Well, she's fine. She's
Uh-huh.
he just
So
likes to
Chloe's
take
doing
naps.
okay right now. But I was asking about the other dogs. When you've had other dogs, do you remember when they passed? What happened?
Well, they got sick and then they weren't doing very well, and so we took them to the vet and they ran tests, and then they said they weren't going to make it, and so I held her in my arms, and then
Okay.
my friend had some property, and so we buried them
Okay.
there all together.
Yeah. Yeah. So Rachel, I'm really worried about Chloe. I know she looks like she's doing okay, but the vet did some tests and that's not looking so good.
Well, she's been sick before.
She's been sick before.
but she
So I'll
pulls through.
pause here because I want to point out, what words did you notice I used with Rachel to help her get to a place that Chloe's not okay? What words did I use to help her get there? Whose words, where did I get those words? The vet did some tests. Yeah, that was Rachel. Rachel had said what happened with the other dog, and so I brought it up. So rather than waiting till the dog goes or worrying about this, I'm actually doing some checking out of where is Rachel with all this. And Rachel may not be that coherent and able to talk about it, but she might. I mean, and so we make assumptions about people living with dementia that in many cases, I'll say, yeah, you love her. Boy, it's going to be hard when she goes, eh? Yeah. So what do you think we ought to do when it's, and so it's that conversation. So I'm making a connection. I'm here to support you. I want to check things out. I want to figure this out. I don't want to make assumptions, and I don't want to rob you of some time with Chloe. But if you get this, then we can do this together. And you holding Chloe in your lap when she goes to sleep might make sense. If that's no, she's fine, I think she's fine, then pause, because that's not going to be the answer for you. So the thing to remember is substitution doesn't mean buy a new puppy. Substitution means we may need to grieve the loss of Chloe together, or we may have a therapy dog that comes in and spends a little time. But it's not a substitution as in we're going to take Chloe away and we're going to replace her and you won't notice the difference. Like, it doesn't work like that. And so I think to think it would, but to find a place in a space that Rachel has something to do with herself and with her need to be involved, that makes sense. But to just try to find a fake Chloe, or to a replacement Chloe, that's not the relationship most people have with their dogs or their cats. I can't speak to fish. I'm not familiar with fish, but dogs and cats I do know. I have a friend who it would be, that's her way with chickens. So it might be, you can't just replace one chicken with another one. But for most humans, we bond with an animal because there's something about that particular animal. And to think I can let go of it, it's okay for me to grieve that loss. Why? Because I have dementia, wouldn't I be allowed to do a grieving? I mean, grieving is grieving, but helping me come back from grief and find a new space to be in without feeling joyful for a while. I may not feel joyful, but at least not in horrid black grief, because that's a substitution. So Corey, you got anything else?
Yes. Sorry, I couldn't get to my microphone fast enough.
Sorry. Okay.
We have a question that I don't know that we've addressed before.
Okay.
So we've got a father who is a Vietnam vet. He's in the early stages of dementia and appears to have become an alcoholic.
Okay.
It doesn't feel intentional to this person, but he'll look right at him and then say he didn't drink. So
right.
I guess recently it happened that he did this and then the bottle was gone. And what can you recommend If he's at a bowling alley or a golf course, he goes right to the bar. He's never really been a heavy drinker until the last 6 months or so.
Yeah. So a couple of things. One of the realities is if he was in Vietnam, there's a strong possibility he has post-traumatic stress disorder. It was a highly underdiagnosed condition post-Vietnam. And when folks came back from Vietnam, there was a lot of disregard for them and what they did, because many of them went over, they either wanted to go or didn't go. That was still draft time. People got drafted. When people came back, there was a lot of people didn't like what happened in Vietnam, and they showed it with veterans. So veterans often put a lid on and covered things up and never much talked about their experience during that. And so there's this added sort of old burden, and a lot of things that happened there were never shared out. And that was long before the military and the veterans hospitals really started doing that, dealing with post-traumatic stress and recognizing it as a very common condition and doing something. So the second side of this coin is that alcohol is one of the oldest analgesics and anesthetizing agents that we know. And the plus of it is when I drink it, it also gives me a sugar rush because it's basically got a lot of glucose in it. So it gives me some sugar rush and it dulls pain, whether it's physical pain, emotional pain, or even spiritual pain. It makes me feel pain less. As a matter of fact, I feel everything less. And so I get sort of a rush, and then I get a sort of a jack up on feeling okay. And part of the reason I feel okay is that I feel nothing. So I'm a disregard. The thing we know it also does, alcohol is very good at blurring and cutting off the prefrontal cortex's ability to manage and control, and in remembering details of stuff. Alcohol makes it almost impossible to get detailed information locked in. So it affects the hippocampal area, and that I can't learn and remember what I'm drinking. So I often will have people who are in the early stages of dementia won't remember what they say or do when they drink. They will not remember that they've already had one drink. And so they just want to drink. Well, they've already had 2 drinks, but that's immediate recall. So they don't remember they've had 2. The other, golly Moses. I have language difficulties, but I get very less socially controlled. And so the bar is a perfect place. I'll take one. Give me another. Give me another. I don't need to have language to communicate. I put the money on the bar. He can give me another one. I have a tab. It's even better. We're bowling. Yeah. Yeah. And so that social anxiety disappears once I have a drink. Oh, with 2, and then 3. Oh my. So what happens is, whereas before I didn't need alcohol, now when I'm trying to be social and I'm trying to engage and I'm trying to do things, I can't do this without it, because I get an edge. The anxiety kicks in, and it's coming from an old place of distress, but it's being transferred into the current moment. And so these opportunities, it's just like, I need a break. I need a break. But it's not even, it shouldn't be stressful. We're just going bowling. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it shouldn't be stressful, but being in an alley where there's loud noises, where there's kapoom, kapoom goes the pins. It's dark, things are moving, people are swinging beside me in aisles beside me, and I can't see exactly what they're doing. That old PTSD, it's not going to be a blatant, like going under the bed. It's going to be taking the edge off with alcohol. So there's going to be a lot of that. And yet, if you ask me, I didn't have anything. So the question becomes, can you work with the bartender to switch out with O'Doul's or something that gives me that sense that I'm getting the flavor and the taste and the kick, but in fact, what I'm missing is the analgesic property. And see also that risk that I'll get sloppy and start really being much bolder than I would. And then it's frustrating for everybody because I'm not actually taking in any data. Even though it may look like I'm processing data, I'm doing social cover on that. I'm not really able to take in and process info because the alcohol is making it very difficult. So figuring out how to tone down my alcohol without trying to put the stopper on it, but also looking to realize, whoa, we have a condition here that's being not well managed, that's underneath the dementia that very likely never got well managed. And that's just because it was a secret condition. Until the Iraq-Afghanistan group, we haven't really talked about PTSD as a very common phenomena for any wartime experience, and particularly the Vietnam vets, high risk. Because when they came back, they came back to a very different America than when they left. And it's not talked about. And of all the veterans, they're the least respected, even now.
Well, I hope that as the suicide rate is rising, that it looks like they're starting to point more attention to look at the PTSD and hopefully even for those who are older, that'll be a consideration for them.
I'm hoping, but it's taken a long time. I mean, many of the conditions that came out of Vietnam weren't even considered service related for an incredibly long time. At least, unless it was physical disabilities, it was not considered a service related condition. And it's only recently it's even becoming something we are actually addressing. Not nearly in the numbers that many of us have been in the system a while knew that it was happening. We were already seeing it back in the 80s and the 90s. Yeah.
I know that we've recently been learning and understanding that concussions and traumatic brain injuries, TBIs, are now being recognized as an increased risk for developing dementia. Is PTSD also recognized as a factor in a potential increase in risk?
Absolutely, and particularly untreated PTSD. If you have it and it's never been successfully managed or treated, even if people attempted to treat it, because a lot of strategies we tried initially were not particularly helpful strategies, which was to drug it. And unfortunately, there's still a lot of drugging PTSD as a primary management style and strategy because people are still not asking the right questions and providing the right support. And so people get what they get, which is often cocktails of medications. Right,
and it also, actually, you're just connecting a loop for me in that when you say we're drugging it, hearing so much now, at least in my community of veterans in my life, the past few 10, 15, 20 years of war, that the drugging is self-induced, which comes back to that alcohol, which I know there are alcohol-related dementias. So
correct. Yes. Yeah. But we also have, a significant number of people that I think are being totally missed in the opioid epidemic that had traumatic head injuries, have PTSD, have been trying to manage that distress pattern and social anxiety. And you add those things together, PTSD is going to be one of those phenomena that people are trying to take away the pain, to take away that. And so that's a group that I think at this point, everybody's concerned about this group in general. That's a subset that I think is getting missed. And I think there's going to be a huge number of veterans that fall within that. So we look at that 20 veterans a day committing suicide. 20 to 22 is the last number that I'm looking at. I think we have a significant number of people that are coming back that have had head trauma, that haven't been well managed and well supported. And part of that was that on top of that, now they had PTSD as well coming back. And at first it wasn't so bad, but when you start to see brain change and you add these other things in, it's starting to mount up. And that's incredibly disheartening and frightening to some extent for families that are coping with coming back from these situations and trying to manage. And North Carolina certainly has a huge number, which is where I live.
So do you think actually maybe approaching people that you recognize who are younger, who might be showing PTSD, trouble with opioids, alcohol, depression, maybe thinking about the approach itself, treating it, not that they necessarily have dementia,
Right.
but maybe starting to think about how your skills that you use, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I think trying to get people into the right support structures is great. The reality is they're hard to get to, and many people are shy about entering them for lots of reasons. So finding and supporting people as best we can and seeing if we can help them make connections. We could be that partner that helps to get the skills started, that gets moving in the right direction. For sure, people's opinions about things can really get in the way of the help that they need. And it's not a fun place to be. I've been in the VA system. I've been in healthcare systems where people get identified as users or addicts, or they could do more if they just, and it's like when people, as soon as they say, if they would just, it's like, oh, this is going to go badly. So for me, it's about brain change and whose brain needs to change.
It's somebody on the YouTube channel made a comment that her father, who was a Vietnam vet, never talked about it until recently as his dementia progresses. And I wonder, and this really is just a curiosity of what is their value in partnering people like that together so that they have somebody that they can talk about that stuff and feel comfortable. Yeah, in some of the VA long-term, the veterans homes that I've worked in, what I've encouraged them to do is create a club atmosphere. So take a section of the nursing home, close it off, create it sort of like a USO kind of place where people can go and do old duels, do game posters, do some things up, and give guys a place to go and hang where they can talk, and then get some people in there who know how to be skillful and supportive. And it's the atmosphere in the space to start telling those stories. Instead of putting on movies that are risky or TV shows that are risky, actually creating an environment of safety and support and a place where it's okay to go and hang out and talk about that stuff, shoot pool and talk about that stuff. And to set up an environment that's a comfortable talking environment for men, particularly. Women, we would have to create a separate environment in many ways, because women in the military, there's a different element to that, and that's certainly becoming more of an issue as well. But to create those spaces where guys feel free to do something and talk while they're doing something. Guys are not the big, let's go to a roundabout talk session and let's talk. Let's have something in our hands. Let's be doing something. Let's be throwing darts, and then let's just throw out that, So tell me a little bit about now, which branch of service were you in? And you have the branches of service up, and people get a chance to sort of lay those things out. And then be prepared for potentially when you bring something up, it brings it up like in real time. So we have to have skilled people around, but better than what we're doing sometimes. Yeah, I would agree with that. Was there someone else in the Zoom room that had a question? I thought I saw a couple of microphones unmute and remute.
Looks like we got a listener. We got listeners.
I saw a comment, Teepa, in the chat.
Okay.
Trisha that said, my father is sometimes fairly lucid when it comes to his own personal self. He tells me stories and I'm not sure what and what not to believe.
So what I would say is one of the things that people tell stories about is there's something that they want you to notice. And although that story might not be 100% true, there's something about the story that they're trying to share out. And so often sharing back a few words could help you try to, and they may not even be sure. And their brain is telling them something's true that may not be entirely accurate, But if you go along on the journey, sometimes things can get clearer as you process through. So Mary Donnelly, are you around? Can you talk, or are you just wanting to listen in?
Hi,
Can you talk, or you just want to listen in?
I can talk.
Okay, so I want you to imagine that you want to tell me about many of the instruments that you've either made or you played, or some bands that you played with. And the fact of the matter is, Mary works in a music shop and she does sing, and she sings with her husband, and they do some programs, but she's never actually, I don't believe, sang on stage with Bonnie Raitt, or, you know, actually played mandolin for, you know, Steve Martin, or been on the, you know, whatever stage, you know. So I don't think she's done any of those things, but she will tell me something and we'll go from wherever she lands. Okay, so go ahead, Mary, and tell me your story.
Okay, so yeah, so I was on stage with Janice Ian and with Robin Bullock, who is a big name, and I met Vince Gill and had a lovely 45 minutes playing dulcimer with him, but that was not on stage. That was just, you know.
Yeah, so when you were on stage, what did you like best about it?
Oh, yeah. Making the music, it was, you know, you're surrounded by people who are really great.
So being with other people who love to make music too, huh?
We sounded so good together. Yeah, it was great.
Yeah, so part of it, now were you singing or were you playing, or both?
Well, I was playing keyboard and doing a little background singing. Tom, my husband, was doing most of it.
Most of the singing, but you enjoyed it. Now, was it him being there, or was it being around other people who like to sing? Which do you think was the most for you?
Oh, that's a tough one. I wouldn't have been in that situation if he hadn't been there. So it's hard to imagine being in that situation.
Yeah, so you don't necessarily want to be at the microphone in front, but you like being on the stage with somebody who's good at the microphone.
There you go. That's good.
Yeah. Hey, so listen, I have a favor to ask of you.
Okay.
If we were to get a group together, would you help me pick music that we could do?
That'd be great. That'd be great.
Wow, that would be terrific. Now, you're mostly, do you like bluegrass or something else?
Well, you know, if you're asking me to help you pick music, I'd probably do better with you know, some sort of traditional stuff. I don't know bluegrass very well, but I'd sure like to.
Okay, but you know more traditional.
Yeah, trad music, like folk music, like the stuff that I know you've done, some old Peter and John Denver
stuff. Yeah. Well, you know what? I'd love to do that. Okay, so does it matter whether Mary was accurate in her story about herself?
And I wasn't.
No. What was it that really came from that? Because what was it that she wanted me to get from that? Why did she bother to tell me that story? What do you think, Catherine?
She's important and she's successful and she has relationships.
Yeah, so for her, is the most important thing for her to be in the spotlight or to be with people who are good at doing something. She really liked being with people and being part of that. And yes, it went really well. So what can I use from that to bring it to our current lifestyle and what we're doing in life? Because the reality is those stories come up because that's what I remember me being good at, or me being not good at, or what I'm trying to do is share something of me. And so what we have the opportunity to do is to take what is shared and figure out how we're going to use it now. How can I use this now? And Mary, I didn't say play a musical instrument. I didn't say sing a song. I said, help me pick something out, because I've got to take this in baby steps. Because if Mary is no longer able to play the musical instrument like she wants, and she used to do it and it was important to her, then if I ask her to play and she doesn't do it well, then I've made her less. Whereas picking out music from this or that there's no wrong answer. I mean, there isn't a wrong. And then I could say, so I'm going to try singing something, Mary, and you tell me whether I should be on the microphone or not, okay?
Okay, so that's important.
Yeah, and so Mary gets to be important.
Mhm. Without you pointing out that I can't do it anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. So whether she can do it or not, we'll figure it out. But I'm the one who's going to put myself out there, and she'll probably say, oh my God, you can't carry tuna in a bucket. And it's like, yeah, sorry about that. But I love to sing. It's called Make a Joyful Noise. I'm really good at the joyful noise part. I'm not so good at the rhythm. Oh, I've got rhythm too, but you know, staying on key, yeah, maybe not. But I do like it.
Okay.
We won't use the microphone. How's that? So I think, you know, again, one of the things that our brains have a hard time doing is letting go of real versus imagined. And the plus of living in dementia land is sort of sometimes the real and imagined, well, where's the line? I think I might have missed the line. Unless there's really a really important reason, like life or death reason, that we have to find the line. I'm not sure we need to draw it. I mean, it's sort of like just blur the watercolors. It's okay. Watercolors are watercolors. That's what they're designed to do. It's not a detailed picture where I'm drawing the blueprint for the Sistine Chapel. I'm just looking at the Sistine Chapel and going, whoa, man, that's pretty amazing. And if they said they painted us, like, wow, you did a phenomenal job. I mean, not everybody's Michelangelo, but hey, a skin off my nose. And it's like, yes. Hey, Mickey.
Hi. Speaking into what you just said, I had an experience with my husband with vascular dementia. Mm-hmm. Claimed he played basketball with a young man who was old enough to be his grandson, and insisted on that story, not once, but multiple times. And I found it a little embarrassing, but we could laugh. And then my grandson's wife said, Gramps, that's your story and you're sticking to it. Good for you. And that put me in my place.
Good. Well, I'm sorry that you got put in your place, but I'm glad she had the skill to do it.
I thanked her for that.
Yeah, because sometimes we just like, oh my gosh, that doesn't make any sense. And we have such a hard time of it. It doesn't make any sense. Letting go of it doesn't make sense. It's like he wanted to be part of life. And he wanted to still have a role in life. And that he played and he was competent and he was skillful. Oh, he so wants to be playful and competent and skillful. And it's like, sure, do it. And that's where you learned letting go of that piece. Because he was still being playful and competent. And it's like, yeah, so maybe we could let go. Because he can't. It's like he needed that. In that moment, there was something about it he so needed. And it's like, yeah, and I didn't. So I'm willing to let it go. So good for you for hearing your daughter-in-law and hearing that she said it, not saying it in a mean way, but yeah, I need to let it go. Cool.
Hey, Teepa.
Yes, ma'am.
So we're at 8:30.
Yep.
Time for us to wrap things up, but I wanted to ask you really quick. We had some people on YouTube who were asking about the conference that's coming up in November. So could you give us a quick blurb about that?
Yeah, we're meeting in Cary, North Carolina, close to the airport. It's a really cool hotel. I know you don't care about that, but it is actually a nice hotel. What we're going to be doing is, for the very first time across all of the US and into Canada, we'll have folks from Canada coming down, from Hawaii. We'll maybe have some folks joining us via internet. We are having the first ever PAC conference where I will be doing some VIP sessions, training sessions for people, in-depth training. We'll be having some skill building sessions with mentors working hands-on with people to develop some skills and abilities. We'll have people living with dementia and care partners talking about experiences and skill building and knowledge in those areas. And we'll have general sessions as well, open to everyone. We'll have a big opening and closing where I'll be presenting with people living with dementia. Together, we'll be telling stories and figuring things out. And we're also doing a stage show the Sunday evening before, which is about typical life with dementia and life with skill with dementia and what's possible when you put it together. So we've got it online. We hope that you're able to come join us. We tried to keep the price as low as we could. And we also have discounts if you bring a partner. We're in favor of people bringing people with them.
It's all about building that support team.
Yeah. So we're excited about everybody getting together.
And we are going to have people, is this correct, Teepa? We're going to have packed people who are available throughout the days to be with people living with dementia if they need a little respite.
Yep. But people living with, and people living with dementia will also be in sessions if they choose to do that to help other people build their skills. So when you're wondering about whether or not I've got a PPA or a action starter that's going to work, people living with dementia will be there to tell you whether or not it worked for them. So it's less of an investment in somebody you care a lot about. People who are living with dementia who still want to make a difference in the world are coming to be part of making a difference in the world.
And hopefully some of you will come and join us.
Yeah. Cool.
So real quick, I'd like to thank everybody for joining us tonight. This is really a good time for us to meet some new people and get some new people connected with PAC. If you like what you saw here tonight, please tell a friend who you might think could use this as a good resource. We are on social media on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Twitter. We would love to connect with you there. You can always go to teepasnow.com to find out where Teepa is speaking. Are we holding classes in your area? And we've got a huge selection of online webinars that you can join us for. There are some free ones for family care partners. We have some specifically for people living with dementia. And then we've got some webinars that are topic specific. We'll have one coming up on April 22nd titled, Have You Seen My Mother? And it's all about dealing with sadness and loss, which we've talked a little bit about some of that tonight. And then on April 24th, we're going to look at ways to minimize distress to make transitions more successful. So we would love to see you on those. Teepa, anything else from you?
Our next Ask Teepa Anything will be May 29th, Wednesday, May 29th, if you want to come back and join us again. And if you have questions before then, send them in to Corey, because she'll make sure they're on the agenda.
And I know that there's some questions we didn't get to tonight just for lack of time. We can still get you some answers and get you connected with consultants who can help you talk through this and figure some things out. So please, you can check us out on the website or send your email to consult@teepasnow.com and we'll have somebody connect with you to figure that out.
Sure. Thanks, everybody. Have a good evening. It was good talking to you. Take care.